Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the May Lochaber Area Committee meeting. We have no apologies for absence. Do we have any declarations of interest, transparency statements? Nope. So moving on to item 3, which is the housing performance report, and we have David Wood and Angus Lowry have joined us online. So thank you very much for joining us. Good morning. And I think, do you have a presentation, David, or are you happy just to take questions from members?
Okay, thanks, Chair. Morning, everyone. You've seen the report, which is a good report. I'm sure you've read it and you're aware of the content. So what my intention was to do is just look at the essential areas and then field any questions if anyone has any. If that's okay with you.
Yeah, that sounds fine. Thank you very much, David.
Okay, thank you. So if we look at the first item, repairs. Emergency repairs for both Lochaber wards are well within the 14-hour target, and the non-emergency repairs for both wards are within the 8-day target, so good performance on that area. Moving on to the relet times. Relet times for Ward 11 are within the 35-day target, but unfortunately Ward 21's relet times are slightly over target, standing on 40.94 days. So that's the one area of weakness in the report. Rent arrears have decreased, which is demonstrating a consistent downward trend. And of course, the housing management officers continue to work actively with clients to help with any problems with rent arrears. And finally, homelessness, 35 presentations in this quarter across Lochaber. So they're the main points of the report. So I'm more than happy to take any questions if anyone has any now.
Okay, thanks, David, and thanks for the report. Does anyone? Sorry, we've just got a siren going past. Does anyone have any questions? Angus.
David, I met Brian Cameron in Inverness, and I've had several email exchanges with him, and he was going to come down specifically to look at the quadrangles at Clagging, and I know this has been mentioned in the report here. I would say that they are the worst buildings in the area, and I think we did go around them with Angus Lowry, etc., about 15 months ago, and we would talk about the area inside, i.e. the space inside and things like that. And it was, at that time, I think, getting a £60,000 budget for improving it. But I think all of us agree that the quadrangle needed a very major refurbishment.
Okay.
And
Angus Lowry may be able to put me right on this, but I'm sure Rory McLeod has got an intention to update at the ward business meeting regarding that, and as the service lead, he'll have far more detail about the quadrangles and what's happening. But my understanding was there was an agreement previously that any monies would be put forward to upgrade properties in terms of heating and windows and items such as that. But again, I think Rory McLeod would be the best one to update on that in far more detail.
Yeah, thanks, David. And we have got we are going to have an update at an area business meeting. So, but yeah, thanks, Angus. John.
Thank you. Morning, David.
Morning.
It might not be within your remit to be able to answer the question, but looking at Mallaig and Arisaig and the areas down at the end of the peninsula, there appears to be a shortage of property suitable for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
Are we addressing that? I know the current financial situation is really dire, but in terms of that need, are we addressing it? What's the current situation with that?
Okay, I think you're absolutely correct in what you say, but I think that's the case across Lochaber, not just in the peninsula. There's certainly a shortage of suitably adapted properties for people with disabilities. And I know when new bills are proposed, one of the things we always report back to the development team are that we could do with more properties of that nature. So whether we get them or not is strictly down to them, and I suspect it's probably down to a budgetary constraint. But certainly, I'm in total agreement with you. We could certainly do with more of those properties. And from an operational point of view, we could certainly use them when we've got them. There's no question about that.
Yes, yeah. I suppose it's tagged onto another issue as well, which I don't know, maybe I need to present this in full council, but there's something about we have a duty of care for these people. So if there isn't the availability of properties, then potentially we leave disabled people in potentially homeless situations, some of them. So there's that aspect that, again, I don't know, maybe I need to address that in council. But thank you.
Yeah. Again, just to point out, one of the things we do quite closely is work with the occupational therapists. And of course, if they make a request to us that people need adaptations for their home, we will certainly look at that, and where possible, we will agree it, and we'll make that work happen. So that goes on behind the scenes quite frequently as well. But you're still right; it doesn't address the fact that we don't have enough of these property types.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Sarah?
Thank you. I've got two questions actually.
Go for it, Sarah.
Good morning, David. Thank you for the report.
Morning.
The question I want to ask you is, I'll get the microphone closer to me. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, that's better. Thank you. The question is about mold. I'm receiving a lot of correspondence about mold. So some of it, because there's different types of mold, some of it can be basically produced by the tenant, when they do the washing, for example, when they dry the washing. Some of it can come from inside, from the walls. There's different types of mold. Are tenants sufficiently equipped and informed about how to deal with it, how to avoid it, and how to make a distinction between what is caused by the way they live, for example, a lack of ventilation, opening the windows, and which one actually comes from the building itself?
Yeah, I think that's quite an issue again throughout the area, but I think Angus could probably answer that better than me.
So all the maintenance officers who go out to look at these type of issues, they will inform the tenants of how best to prevent condensation, which can lead to mould. They also hand out leaflets, and in the Housing Matter newsletter, there was an update on mould, and we do have information on the council website as well. Essentially, mould, no matter what the cause of it is mould, but sometimes it can be caused by a building defect, and sometimes it can be made a lot worse by a tenant's lifestyle potentially. So, but I mean, that's no problem to explain to a tenant, how they can help make the position better. Sometimes the tenant doesn't agree with something being caused by their lifestyle. So in that situation, we will often get an independent surveyor to go out and give his recommendations as well. And if there's anything that the council need to do off the back of his recommendations, then that's what we'll do.
And my other question is completely different. Is about antisocial behaviour. I don't know if it comes within this area, or because this is more about repairs. Is it relevant to this report? Tenants well informed enough about how to deal with antisocial behaviour from other tenants, because the feedback I get is that they find the whole thing is slow, but do they know enough that there are procedures, how it works, or do they wait sometimes too long till they report it? What advice is given to tenants who have to endure antisocial behaviour from other tenants?
Yeah, I would hope that most tenants are aware of how to report these things, but the rule of thumb is if they have any problems of that nature, they contact their housing management officer and report it. We always recommend where antisocial behaviour is involved, they also report it to the police as well. Obviously, before we can take any action, we've got to evidence that this is happening and we've got to prove it. Otherwise, we end up in this kind of one word against another situation. So everything that we action has got to be evidence. So again, rule of thumb, contact the housing management officer, make that initial contact, make that initial report, and they'll be advised accordingly from there what actions they should take. And if it's proven, then we will certainly take whatever level of action is necessary. But of course, the action we take has got to be proportionate to the level of antisocial behaviour involved. There's a great expectation from tenants that, oh, there's antisocial behaviour going on, you need to evict that tenant. If only it was that easy. It just isn't. So everything we do has got to be evidence, got to be proved. And of course, the best area to prove that is with verification from Police Scotland. And a lot of the times, our tenants don't report it to Police Scotland, or they leave it so long to say, this happened, for example, 6 months ago. Well, there's nothing. What do you want us to do if something that happened 6 months previously? So report it straight away, get in touch with the housing management officer, report it to Police Scotland, and then we can pick it up from there and take any appropriate action.
And if a tenant is evicted, does that mean we relocate that tenant in another home of our estates?
It really depends on what the level of antisocial behaviour is. It may be that, for example, it could be anything from a warning letter, a verbal warning, right through to actual eviction. It depends on the level of antisocial behaviour. But again, that's why I say any action we take has got to be proportionate.
Yeah. No, my question was, when there is an eviction, does that mean the tenant is moved to another flat or house of our estates?
Well, if there's an eviction, for example, so that effectively we remove that tenant from their tenancy, they have the right to make a homeless application straight away. That homeless application will be assessed on its individual merits, and of course, the assessment has got to be: are you homeless? Or, for example, are you intentionally homeless? Now, it could well be that we decide that they are intentionally homeless because of their actions relating to antisocial behaviour, and that may mean we don't have extensive duties towards them other than to give them short-term temporary accommodation. So it's all dealt with on an individual basis depending on circumstance, but we will certainly act on it in whatever way we can and appropriately.
Thank you, David.
Thanks very much. Andrew.
Thanks, Kate. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, seems okay.
Yeah, okay. 2 points I wanted to bring up. Adaptations. Thomas and I were at the Lochaber Care and Repair meeting yesterday. I don't think I'm spilling the beans out of court, am I, Thomas? If I say the service appears to be in jeopardy for want of funding from the NHS, if I've understood the situation correctly. So you might want to come in on that one, Thomas. And the second point was on mould. A simple question: there is paint which is mould resistant, is that used in situations where mould appears in our houses? That's all I wanted to say. Thomas, do you want to come in?
Okay. What is it? Like there's the handy person service, which, as council officers may know, it fits aids and adaptations to houses to enable people to stay in them, and it's funded between Highland Council and NHS. And there's been a cut in funding proposed, which would take it back to levels last seen in 2015. So that is currently being re-investigated. It's something that it just can't stand. You know, it's vitally important that we fit handrails. We do things like just prevent falls and trips for people that are elderly and disabled. But I think in the next couple of weeks we'll see developments on it, because it just seems to be a complete and utter anomaly. If I'd had more time to think about it, I had a better answer. But I raised it at full council last Thursday. I know that council officers at Inverness HQ level are looking into it, and I think we'll hear developments over the next couple of weeks. But it's our houses that may be getting aids and adaptations fitted to them, but it's not our direct responsibility. The handy person service, it's between NHS. It's NHS's that look after that aspect of social care. So, but that's all I've got to say on that. To be honest with you, it's a situation that's being reviewed at the moment.
And the argument for support is it's cost a lot less to run the handy person service than to keep people in hospital.
You want me to come in that, David? Just on the repair side of it. So we do carry out, in-house a lot of those type of repairs ourselves, not through the handy person service. So there's still an element of that sits with the housing repair service for council houses. There may be some things the handy person does within council houses, but I think the majority of things are done within our in-house teams. If the handy person service is reduced, it may increase the work that we have potentially, and there may be some grey areas where we don't already cover, which we could look at. On your second point on mould, yes, we do use that paint.
Okay. Thanks, Angus.
One
more question, John.
Thanks very much. David, just a quick question. Looking at the figures, it's probably not that important a question, but it's intriguing. The length of time to complete non-emergency repairs looks really good. I think Cool and Mallaig were doing really well. We're consistently below the sort of Highland average, which is really good. But the emergency repairs seem to be taking a bit longer, and we don't seem to be working as well on that. Is there a reason behind that?
So what was your comparison of figures there? Sorry.
The non-emergency repairs in Cool and Mallaig, we seem to be doing really well. We're quite below the sort of Highland average, and we're within the target. So that's doing really well. But the emergency repairs, not quite as well. Is it a different team? Is there a shortage of staff? I'm just wondering, is there a reason behind the difference in figures?
I thought the emergency repairs were good as well, to be honest with you. I thought they were still within target. I think the only ones that figures that were out with target were the relay repairs for William and Darren and Birkin.
Right, and I'm looking at your chart here. The Cool and Mallaig Q3 was 5.4 hours. Q4 was 4.8. And the Highland average is 3.6 and 4.1. So
sorry, you're relating that to the Highland average. So
yeah.
So in terms of that, I think we, just with the geography of the area, we always tend to be a little bit out with, because that compares us to areas like Inverness City, where you could have 1,000 houses within, a square mile kind of thing. So
Right.
I think we do tend to be a little bit longer than some other areas on that basis. Apologies, I didn't understand what you're reading to begin with there.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Angus. No more questions? So thank you very much, David and Angus, for joining us. And so we've noted the report, and have a good day. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
So moving on, item 4 is Fort William Common Good Fund, the asset register, and we've got Sarah Murdoch has joined us online. So thank you very much good morning, and thank you very much, Sarah. We've all seen the report. Are you happy just to take questions, or did you have a short presentation?
Certainly no. I mean, obviously I came along to an area business meeting, so we went through everything that's in the proposed list there. So members were aware of that. The only thing that is contained in the report that is summarised perhaps in a little bit more detail is that ASIT 5.4, which really summarises what the next step of the process is, which is the consultation process. So that gives all that broken down as we're required to do by the statutory guidance. So no, I mean, I'm just happy to take questions. It's obviously a process that evolves now as we go on with it. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah, and thanks for the report. So we have Angus has a question.
Sarah, when I read through this, there was one which was a revenue generating property, but I don't think it was mentioned which one it was. Which one is that?
The property that's currently generating revenue is the West End car park.
Yeah, okay.
We've identified part of the foreshore, the amenity land, and part of that car park. The other part of it sits on general fund land.
Okay. And the Croft Tea House on Belford Road, I obviously don't know where the current one goes or exactly what site that is. Where is that? Is it near Lochaber Hope or?
It's near to I don't know if it's still in existence, whether they still operate, but the former curling rinks, and it's on the opposite side to Clagham Park, the opposite side of, is it the river to Clagham Park? So it's where either the old curling ponds were.
Yeah. On the road up to the Glen Nevis.
Yeah, so up the road up Glen Nevis towards the visitor centre, isn't it? Yeah. Yes. Can I just, before Thomas comes in, could I just ask a couple of questions because they're related to what Angus has already raised? So, in terms of the public consultation, I think it would be really useful if there was a map provided to give the outline of the land assets that have been described here in this paper, because it just makes it easy if you can visualize and see where those assets are. So I think for the consultation, a map would be really useful. And then in terms of the West End car park, what portion of the car park is common good land, and therefore what portion of the income from the car park should be diverted to a common good fund? Thank you.
Yeah, as far as the map is concerned, certainly I think members may recall, I produced asset plans for the discussion purposes. It's something that we haven't used as part of the public facing consultations in the past, but there's no reason why they can't go out. So to accompany the asset register, there's no reason why, for instance, an additional page could be included at this stage on the list for consultation that, or pages that includes copies of those plans in the same order that they appear on the register, so that you at least see then the outline of the area that is identified as being proposed common good. And there may well be other areas that members of the public wish to put forward for investigation. And that's always the hope of the consultation, because we do our best, but we're bound to miss something. So yes, I can certainly add that in. I'm quite happy to add that in. That's not a difficulty. As far as the division of the car park is concerned, it will be done by measurement. At the moment, I would say it's somewhere between half and 2/3 of the car park sits common good. So it's in between that sort of measurement. And it's not unusual across Highland for us to have split sites where we have some properties that actually sit split between common good land and general fund land. We've got a number of them. We've got some buildings, in fact, that, because of how they are now, actually are formed of buildings that sit on general fund and common good fund. So it's not just confined to land. So it's not unusual. This was unusual in the sense that the land that now sits on common good land is really effectively the extension of the car park. And that came about as a result of the acquired land due to the reclamation and so forth, and that was originally part and parcel of Crown land. So that came along far later. So it came along out with the borough system, but the part of the land that is identified as common good actually came along well within before the cut-off of 75, and it's contained in charter documents and from Charter of Novodamus and a few charters. So it's actually in title deeds, which is something that's good from that point of view. So we will have the measurements of that land. It's a case of making sure that we can decide how it splits and whether they want to split it on the best, most understandable splitting for the division of the income that the car park recovers, I think, is what's to be decided on that. So, but it's approximately between a half and 2/3.
Okay, thank you. Because we've got a parking item coming up later in the committee. So I've got that on to discuss with Shane. So at what stage in this process will the revenue from the car park start going into a common good fund then?
Well, technically, as soon as it is identified as common good, and I mean, we have these title deeds. It's not like, Shane might not be happy to hear this, but it's not like where it's anything vague that we're having to give a particular assessment. I mean, these are title deeds. It's interesting, and it actually says, it's confusing. Let's say the Charter of Novodamus confirms a title deed plus adds in extra land. So when you first read the title documents, it's almost like one has repeated the other. And in effect, it has. It's just confirmed what has gone before, which was something that was quite common. But it's land that is to be for the use and benefit of the inhabitants of the borough, to be an ornament and recreational ground, to be used for the enjoyment. It's all the common good words that are contained in the deeds. It ticks the boxes. It was a nice, quite straightforward title deed to get, they aren't always like that. So yes, it's quite important from that point of view. And it's also quite interesting that the later deed includes part of the foreshore, because obviously foreshore is one of those things across Highland that some common goods own foreshore, some are still in the ownership of the Crown, some are estate land, and sometimes they're of more benefit than others. But this is a part of foreshore that the particular person concerned felt would be beneficial for the borough to have control of, for whatever reason. So that sort of adds to that piece of land as well. So if we were to be doing some form of consultation, if there was a change of use, for example, about this piece of land, I would be saying, well, it doesn't matter that the asset register hasn't been published. We say that's common good land. We would have to do the consultation, even though the asset register isn't published. So what I would say is we have already identified this land as common good. It's unlikely, in my view, from knowledge of common good, to be removed as common good. There's no reason why it should be. There's nothing that indicates in these deeds that it was acquired for a statutory purpose at all. And that's about the only thing. It definitely wasn't acquired for trust purposes. So I would say there's no reason why we couldn't argue that it should happen from as soon as we identified that land as common good. Now, because the way that you investigate these things takes time, it would be very hard to say, when did I identify that piece of land, the date, as opposed to when did I identify an entry two sections below. So that will have to be a decision, and that's a decision very much, I think, for members. Do you consider that the date that this is formally identified as common good is actually the date that we agree that it's going out to consultation? Because we are now putting in the public domain the property that we are saying we think this is common good property, and we're asking for the public to make comment on it. So do we go from the moment that we say today's date that you confirm that the consultation is to commence? That I'm just thinking about a definitive date, and it's useful to have a definitive date. It might be that arguments might be made on behalf of the general fund that would say we would want it to be the date the register is published. The statute is silent on that, and the guidance is silent on that. So that is very much a decision to be made at the level of committee as to when would be considered the appropriate date. But as I say, a good rule of thumb is that if we were having to do some sort of disposal or change of use, I would say it doesn't matter that that asset register isn't published. The very first consultation we did, we hadn't published any asset registers when we had to do the consultation. So
thanks, Sarah. I'll just before Angus, I think there are two potentials, I guess, either today's date or the date from the area business meeting. Or anyway, Thomas, you've got a question.
Yeah, common good is one of the things that Fort William's it's not had it, and it's amazing how much a common good can unlock things, the most mundane things. There's a common good fund, a pool of money there that can help set up assets, set up initiatives. If there's something that comes to the town itself, we've never had it, and it's just absolutely brilliant to see us actually putting this together. There's bits within the report where it mentions that the costs will be incurred that are standard across it, and certainly on day one we'll have lots of tangible assets in our common good fund, but we'll have no cash deposits, and it's just that if there's a period where we don't have much money in which to pay money out. But having just heard about the West End car park, that's absolute dynamite. That's incredible. That could generate an incredible income for this town. It is an incredibly busy piece of infrastructure. It's a piece of infrastructure that needs some investment in it itself. I was in it last night, and it's had a whole series of temporary potholes filled in it, and it's farcical as a car park, so it actually needs some money spent in it. But what a fantastic asset to have in a common good fund that will generate income. The other one I wanted to speak on, most of these properties, they all have clauses or impediments in them that there's no development. So there'll be something that we'll have to look after and maintain, and there'll be a cost to the Common Good Fund looking after them. But there's the Croft Tea Room, which seems to be completely unimpeded with any kind of clause. That is an absolute gold nugget sitting there, because it's in such a busy area, and I think we should be trying to offload that or do something with it to get it to generate money, whether it's a lump sum or whether it's some kind of rental income. But it's incredible to think that we've had that asset sitting at the entrance to Glen Nevis. To be honest, it's about half a mile from Belford Road. That perplexed me how at Belford Road is its address, but it's about half a mile away. But I just don't want to see it in its initial years, or there have been costs to us to get it going. But having just heard what I've heard about the West End car park, I do feel that Fort William has some levers here to pull to say, no, we need money, and we need it into our common good, and there's money coming into that West End car park. It's just good news, and I've been a councillor for 20 years, and I've wanted this to be set up, and I've seen so many things not go ahead because other towns have things like bids, and they have things like common good funds, and they are able to trickle a small amount of money in an initiative that becomes a big tourist attraction, whether it's the mountain biking or whatever. And it's fantastic that Fort William will have that. So But I think we have to offload, or at least get some income coming from that Croft Tea Room site as soon as possible, because that's a plum asset that we've just discovered.
Yep. Thanks, Thomas. So with this report, we were being asked to note the contents of the list of property and agree the commencement of the public consultation. So I think we're happy to agree those. I guess certainly with the public consultation, I think maps would be really useful, especially the curling ponds. I knew where they were, but I couldn't tie them in with the current description with the Belford Road. So that would be really useful. And I would also, could we add an amendment that we agree that as of today, the income from the West End car park, either 1/2 to 2/3 of it, now goes into a common good fund?
Outdated to 1977.
Yes.
I think we have to speak to Shane about it.
Yes.
It's a very appealing.
Yeah. So this will, Sarah.
With the map, could we have a time scale of the process?
Yeah, Sarah, do you have a time? When is the consultation being launched? Sorry if that was in the paper.
What happens now is it goes via the website process. So I will get the asset register, the borough list as you've seen it, as is attached to the report. I will get that sent through with a view to being published. There will be a corresponding press release associated with that. So as soon as that is approved, it will go live on the website. So that's just entirely dictated by as quickly as I can upload immediately following this meeting, and then as quickly as it gets approved on the side of the website approval system. So that doesn't usually take too long. They're usually pretty quick on that. And I'll get the notification through to corporate comms. I will add in, as I say, I will add into the bottom of the asset register and as many sheets as I need to cover those plans. So the asset plans are there, so they will give an indication as to where things are, and it gives an indication as to size, and that will actually show the size of the plan. I can forward that through perhaps to, I don't know if anybody would want to see it, of the area. I mean, members, you should have a copy possibly still of the area that covers the West End car park. I'm just thinking about your later meeting with Shane Manning, it might come in useful there. He is used to operating car parks that exist on common good land. He's got a number across Highland, so he does know all about the ins and outs of that. And then as soon as it's up, we start serving people. As soon as it's live, we start serving and notifying community councils. I will speak with people in the local area about getting a list of community bodies. We basically have to notify as far and wide as we possibly can so that people know how to respond and where to respond, and see if we can generate some interest. I think it's an interesting one. Generating that interest is important because, as has been mentioned, it's not something that's previously possibly been thought of as existing in common good in Fort William. So it's hopefully going to generate some interest because of what we're saying. And then it's a 12-week consultation period. Hopefully we get some responses, build in our replies to those responses, and then it comes back before the first area committee following the conclusion of the consultation period. And the next round of process and things like that will be contained in that report. So that's how the time frame will go.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. That's fantastic. Yeah, we look forward to seeing certainly the communication and press release around the consultation will be important, and it's just this is just such good news. And thank you very much for all your hard work with this.
Sorry, I did have.
Sorry, Liz.
It's all good to get this income, but are we going to come slightly unstuck with the Common Good Fund in that the council has maintained a lot of the lands, the play parks and things? Will the council want to charge the Common Good Fund for the grass cutting and the maintenance?
The question of things like that, I understand, is currently being under review. The amenity services involvement in charging, they obviously charge some areas of common good across Highlands. They don't necessarily charge all areas. Similarly, as we would say, one argument you could say that since we've had this piece of land and since the West End car park was formed, technically, as soon as it was charged for, the common good should have been entitled to some income for that. That way, when we tried too much back accounting, we could drive the poor finance team of the council absolutely mad, I think, with that. So we draw a line. So, for instance, we will not have any back charging from amenity services. They won't say we've been maintaining these for so many years, you now owe us so much money. Moving forward, there is a general policy that says that common good funds, where at all possible, should bear responsibility for their own liabilities. But we are now doing a piece of work. This is new ground for the Highland Council. Up until now, they haven't had funds that have existed, really, that have had no revenue reserves, that have just had property and no revenue reserves. Most of their existing funds have been old funds that came with, as they move through time, revenue reserves. So there is ongoing a piece of work to see how we measure against all of the funds, if we can have an across-the-board measurement to see what should be required by way of payment, particularly in these newly reactivated funds that maybe need some time to get established, but also the general fund side of things will say, well, every other service is bearing responsibility for its liabilities, and we expect the common good to take on some responsibility as well. So there is that piece of work that's ongoing, and members, as part of responsibility for common good now in your area, you will be updated as that proceeds. We're not at the stage to obviously take that before any committees yet, but that's part of what we're trying to do, so that we can have some even-handed corporate approach across all the funds, regardless of the size of those funds, because they do vary incredibly. So yes, as soon as it gets established and gets published, there may well be a request for contribution towards liabilities. And that's something that we will have to work on and look at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Okay. Yep, thank you. And I think Andrew's now, you've got a question.
Yeah, just very quickly. The tea room got demolished. Does anyone know why? It just seems to me that we have lots of visitors up to Glen there, and the tea room would be well used.
Historically, I can say that the building was very ramshackle. There was a point at which it was quite in need of repair. And certainly, I think at the time the council originally acquired it, it was in need of some repair. It could well be to do with that. I suspect there would be information in the borough minutes if we went further and asked archives to inquire into that. It could quite easily be the case that it then passed out of knowledge of ownership of the council. That's not unusual with land that we've been investigating in some of the areas as well, that, you know, suddenly it's just because things take priority and things get focused on. And it could well be that, you know, a decision was then never made what would happen with the land afterwards, and things moved on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, it was quite a ramshackle, certainly toward the end of its life. But Glen Nevis has changed incredibly in the last 40, it'll be about 40 years since it was last served anybody, the Croft tea rooms, maybe 45. But the tourism in Glen Nevis has exploded in the intervening years. And I think what happened is, Sarah alluded to, you know, some institutional memory loss kicked in that it got cleared, people retired, died, moved on, and everybody's just forgotten about it. Because it's incredible. It's actually got a vehicle access off the road from Glen Nevis. It's got everything going for it, and it's just become a forgotten child. So
maybe it can be revamped, rebuilt, whatever, by someone.
Yeah, thank you. Alistair, you've got a question or point?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just to clarify what members are agreeing. So my understanding is members are agreeing the recommendations in the report, with the addition of maps will be provided outlining the land assets as described in the report. There was also an additional recommendation to that, or is that about the when the revenue from common good fund assets can be received? Is that something you want to add, or is that not something at the moment?
I would like to add it. Would that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we've agreed this report today. So I think when we start talking about the income from West End Car Park, I think it should start from today.
So that's all the common good fund assets. The revenue can be income.
Shane's laughing there.
Yeah. Hi, Shane.
Sorry to interrupt, members, but I'm just stumbling across this discussion, and I'd just like to announce my retirement.
Morning, Shane.
If that's okay. I look forward to having a discussion with Sarah offline. Thank you very much. Which will include.
So we give you the freedom of the city of the town of Fort William. Services rendered.
Shane, you should have known I wouldn't keep my hands off the car park if I could find one.
Perhaps we need to leave that final off for now, but there is going to be a discussion about it.
Okay.
Sarah, don't worry, there'll be a statue erected to you.
Will that be at the entrance of the car park?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And Shane, it's not item 8 yet.
I'll see you later.
Bye.
Okay,
perhaps we'll leave that off, Alistair.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you, Sarah, and
Thank you.
yes, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Keep licking lips.
So moving on to item 5, which is the Community Regeneration Fund assessment of applications, and we've got, I think we should have Fiona Cameron online, and Martin is going to pop into the room. So we're
Martin's just coming in now.
Yep. Morning, Martin.
Morning, members.
Morning. Thanks for joining us.
No problem.
So we're considering.
Fiona's not online today, though.
Oh, okay. Okay, but we've got Martin. So we're considering 3 applications, which we've got all the documents for. I think rather than, I'm fine at the moment, thanks, John. Rather than going through them, you'll have all read them. Does anyone have any questions for Martin? And then we'll just decide whether we're happy to approve them or not.
I thought all 3 were fantastic. Particularly cannot believe them.
Yes,
That's very good.
yeah. So any questions?
Yes.
Points?
Is there a timing for the High Street? It's given a timing by this time next year. But
Yeah, they would have to have the funds spent by the end of the financial year, but I think they're just going to progress as quickly as possible with that.
Yeah. Any other questions?
The cool local place plan. My concern is that others are going to start asking for this sort of money. I mean, Arizegg, Mora and Malig are sort of trying to perhaps join together because they are very poor councils up there.
Yeah.
So, if you give to one, will you be opening gates for all of them, or how is it up to them to just go ahead and apply like Cole has?
I think, in fact, what I would say there is if you approve that today on the other 2 projects, you've effectively committed your budget for the current round.
Mm-hmm.
So the discretion would really be with yourselves to see if you wish that type of project to come forward when you have your next allocation or not. Members have the discretion to set local priorities for the type of project you want to fund. Mm-hmm. There will also be, of course, a split in the allocation of funds that you get next time between capital and revenue funding. So I'm not able to say at this stage how much you'll have for revenue funding. So that might impact on your decision at a future date as well.
It's a very good point, but if we just say get 4 a year at 8 grand, that's 32 grand, which is what, say 7% of our total amount. I know it's not as easy as that, but it's a pretty good use of the funds if we do start getting a few of them coming through. I would hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing is that if we don't use, we can't make a decision on any other CRF funds with this remaining funding until another area committee.
Right.
So we're
that's I was thinking the timeline. the others, if they see this and they think, oh, we want to do that, is it going to be too late for them? Because doesn't
For this round it is.
Yeah.
This is the underspend from the current round.
But I suppose I shouldn't be saying, I shouldn't be penalising Coolidge because they've been sharp and asking for money, so whereas the others have been a bit slow because they're all a bit bogged down with the whole idea of place plans.
Yeah, the only thing I would say there is in your current budget, even in projects that are yet to go ahead, and I'm keeping an eye on those, they're all capital projects, so there isn't likely to be significant revenue funding on any underspends in your current budget.
Okay.
This particular fund that they were looking for, it was a kind of fairly small residual amount of revenue funding that was left available from your current allocation.
I think is the general consensus that we're happy to approve all three of these applications?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. That's so all three approved. Thank you very much, Martin.
Thank you. And just to confirm, happy to approve for the amounts in the report. Yes.
Yep. Yep. So thanks for all your work on this, and we look forward to seeing the outcome of these projects.
And we'll continue to keep you updated if there are any other underspends that become available.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Have a good day. So item 6 is Bereavement Services Project Update, and we have Alan Yates has joined us online with this. Thanks for the report, Alan. I think we've all read the report. Do you want to do a small presentation, or are you happy just to take questions?
Thanks, Chair. I can just highlight a couple of parts of the report, if that's okay, please.
Yes, that's very good. Thank you.
And as just to mention, also joining the call is John McLean, our Bereavement Services Manager, and Rachel Robertson, one of the project officers.
Thank you. Good morning.
I think members will be well aware of the issues we've got with burial ground capacity. And in paragraph 5.3, we've summarised some of the problems that are facing the council, not just in Lochaber, but in other areas of Highland as well. Particularly issues around purchase cost and land suitability and geology. The report then goes on to mention some of the specific projects, and as you'll be aware, we have got challenges with Glen Nevis. We are looking at 2 sites, which we are hopeful will move forward, and we'll maybe come on to that in the discussions. And then paragraph 5.6 covers Kinlochmore and Durer, and 5.7 we've just provided a brief update on Blairhour, Morer and Ardgour. Happy to take any questions on the report, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. Any questions? Angus?
Alan, in Glen Nevis, we were talking about buying land from the Forest Commission, which was adjacent to the Glen Nevis one, and expanding into that. Has that fallen through?
You want me to come in there, Chair?
Yes, thank you, Alan. Yeah. Could you hear Angus?
Yes, it was coming through okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
That's one of the options we are actively exploring just now for Glen Nevis. We're in discussions with forestry on land adjacent to the existing burial ground. That was previously discounted, but in a review we did earlier this year of all the sites that had previously been looked at, and in discussions with the project design unit, we think it is an opportunity to look at that area again. The engineering that's been done on the current site has been very successful in terms of drainage, and so we think that's definitely something worth exploring for the sites immediately adjacent to the existing.
Just while I've got a microphone, a couple of other ones. Killy Harold is not on your list. That is the Catholic graveyard in Roy Bridge. which is actively being used. I was at a funeral, a burial there the other day.
Yep. I didn't catch the name of the site there.
Can you not hear me?
I think you can hear you.
Tom, did you hear that, Alan, about Killy Herald near Roy Bridge?
Yeah, we can certainly check that. I'm aware the list that we've provided in the burial grounds, it doesn't capture all the historic sites. And it is something we're proactively looking at to give a more comprehensive. This list is really where the council is involved with the active administration and the operations.
Okay,
but we are looking to expand that. So that's very useful. If you can provide the details to me, I'll get the team just to make sure we can add that onto the list.
Yes. I mean, it's quite a big graveyard and there's still quite a lot of space. Fun enough, on one of the graves, we're allowed to be frivolous here, there's a kind of export and a copy of my book, and my children reckon that they died from reading my book of boredom. The one in Blair is on my brother's farm, and I've spoken to him about expanding that. I don't think there would be any problem there. So you can certainly come to me on that. In Arisaig, you can see this is a bit of a specialist subject of mine. In Arisaig, the community feel quite strongly that the site could be expanded, and it is church land, and the church would be happy for it to do so. There is a lease on that land to a farmer, but he, we are certain, would be happy to do that. So if you want to do that, I'm sure that could be arranged, and I'm probably the right person to speak to on that in Arisaig.
No, that's good to know about Blair. Arisaig, we have had information from the local community about a site that they preferred, and it has been visited by the council's engineers and wasn't felt to be suitable. Now, we may not be talking about the exact same bit of land, so I think if we can have a separate discussion just to make sure we're all talking about the same area. For any area, we're obviously very keen if the communities have got ideas on available land. That's very useful for us to know. So if there's any further information, but we can certainly talk specifically about Arisaig on the particular area that's already been visited by the engineers.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Angus. Thomas and then Sarah. You might be muted, Thomas.
Sorry, is that it? Can you hear me now? It was just to say that I had a report just last week about somebody seeing somebody with a fluorescent jacket and a theodolite in the forest adjacent to Glen Nevis. This was, I think it occurred 2 or 3 or maybe 4 weeks ago, and I was going to raise it. I should have taken my hand down. I realised that there is ongoing exploratory discussion. Sorry, but that's what I was going to raise. Somebody had been seen measuring things.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks.
Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. I discovered recently through a constituent that it's not possible to book a burial plot in advance. You can only do it when somebody has died. Is it something just in Lochaber, or is it around the Highlands? And if we increase the space in future, is it something that's likely to change?
Yeah, we do introduce restrictions on burial grounds, generally when they've got less than 10 years capacity. That's something we do across Highland, and that just allows us to manage the remaining space as we're going forward. When we look at burial grounds that now have more capacity available, we will look to open them up for sale. So we can certainly look at the other sites that are mentioned there in Lochaber and see just what position they're in.
Can I pick up on that one? Because it is quite distressing when people can't be buried in the same one as, for example, their spouse. And I think I know around Arisaig it's causing a lot of angst on that exact issue.
Yeah, there are challenges on some of the sites. without without knowing the specific details of each site in terms of are they double depth, single depth, it's difficult to comment on just what the specific arrangements are. But by all means, if members have got queries about specific sites, please come to myself or John, and we'll look into that with the local teams.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. In 5.5 and 5.6, and 5.5 you talk about 2 possible sites, and then you go on to 5.6 talking about 2 other projects. Are they different from the 2 sites that you've mentioned in 5.5? And just in 5.8, in terms of the feasibility report for the possible crematorium in the Lochaber area, will further discussion be coming back to Lochaber members before it goes to the Community Engagement Committee in September? I would hope that we would possibly be involved in a discussion at area business meeting before it goes to the Communities in Place Committee. If that would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to clarify, the 5.5, the 2 possible sites is 2 possible areas that we're looking for specifically Glen Nevis. So that's the forestry land and one other site we're looking at in the Glen. On the crematorium report, the consultant has been appointed and will be working on the report over the summer. I think there's an opportunity certainly there for discussion locally on the outcomes of that report. I will just check the governance around the C&P committee and coming to the Lochaber committee. I'll just check on that side. But both myself and John are happy to come back and actually discuss the detail around the report. Yeah.
Yeah, I think either a separate meeting or an area business meeting before the committee meeting, so that Lochaber members can be involved and know what's happening before it goes to the strategic committee. Thank you.
Okay.
And Willie, have you got something to say on that?
Yeah, just to note, obviously you've got your business meeting this afternoon, and John is going to join that, I think, briefly this afternoon as well, just to have a discussion around about that, so you can discuss that in more detail then.
Okay, thanks, Willie. Yes, sorry, I forgot about that. But okay, thank you. I guess just the final report might be, yeah. Anyway, thank you very much. Any more questions? No. Okay, thank you. And I think so, Alan, you'll be having some discussions with Angus about various sites. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, members. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. So item 7 is the Islands Act 2018. We've got Angus McLeod who's joined us online. Thank you very much for the report and all the consultation documents. I think, did you want to give a short presentation and then take questions? Thank you.
Yes, Chair. So thank you. So my name is Angus McLeod. I'm the Policy Officer with Highland Council. We spoke last year on the same subject, and just as a term of going over stuff again, I'm the sort of the first point of contact with the Scottish Government when it comes to coordinating and looking at some of the island stuff. So for the purpose of this committee, we're really talking about the small isles, Rum, Mac, Egg and Conna. So the overarching act here is the Islands Scotland Act 2018, and I'm just looking to do a sort of a very brief summary of what that's about. So the Islands Act itself contains a provision and gives a duty to publish a National Islands Plan. The current National Islands Plan has got 13 strategic objectives in it, and there's a process ongoing to review the National Islands Plan. Highland Council have contributed to that plan, and they've also had a review of what all the consultation responses have been. I've sent those out to the relevant island councillors, and they are listed at Annex 1 and Annex 2. It's anticipated there'll be a new National Islands Plan in 2025. So just going through the report itself, and if we just sort of scroll down, you'll see that I've listed, I did the same last year, I've just listed the number of groups that are involved in implementing the National Islands Plan. That just gives you an idea of the number of people who've got fingers in this particular pie itself. So there's a list there, and again, happy to answer any questions in relation to that. If we move on to specifically onto 6.3, you'll see the two projects that Highland put forward for an allocation of money, and it was a competitive process in terms of that, and we were successful. And thankfully for this committee, unlike the Skye and Rossi committee, you were successful in that the Kana Hub got some money. So they got £298,900 going towards a £771,000 project, and that was towards the Kana Hub. In addition to that, there was more funding available through the Islands Cost Crisis Fund, and that meant that a £127 award went to eligible residents on the islands, and those were individuals who were in receipt of means-tested council tax. The next section, it's section 7, relates to carbon neutral islands. This has been on for some time now. The specific island nominated in Highland is Rossi, and I provided a link there to show where their own community community climate action plans have been. The end result of this is that when they publish these reports, effectively looking to share best practice amongst the other islands, but Rossi is the identified island in this regard. If I move on to section 8 now, which is island community impact assessments, this is something I think you'll be hearing a wee bit more about. What we've got is that island community impact assessments have been, as part of the Islands Act, have been enforced now for some time, and they're designed to improve outcomes for islands. And what we're looking at as a Highland Council just now is a process where we're forming part of a wider integrated impact assessment, and it's going to be rolled out very, very soon. But it's making everybody think about how their policy, how their strategy, how their service is going to impact the islands. So I've actually had a number of one-to-one conversations, and I'll not go through them all there, but I've bullet pointed all the conversations that I've had in relation to how they need to think about islands and specifically rural areas. So we'll see that coming through in fruition. Through the month of June, there's going to be training through the month of June on this. Next one is a slightly odd one in that I wasn't really sure where to put this because it doesn't come under the Islands Act, but I was made aware of it and I thought it was probably an appropriate forum to go under, and it relates to an Irish government funding. So the Irish Consul General met with our convener at the back end of December, and he highlighted that there was money available, potential money available through the Shared Islands Fund, which is specifically an Irish government fund, and it relates to Gaelic in terms of an east-west dimension. This is something that came out from the Good Friday Agreement. So I'm just highlighting it here. It's a bit of an outlier, but I'm putting it in here just to make you aware of it, and I've passed it on to our Gaelic unit to let them know that there's potential funding there for Gaelic as well. And the last item I want to raise is about future funding. Now, in the budget last year, in December, some island spending plans were announced. This was a bit of a surprise because we didn't think we were going to get any money for this coming financial year. It was actually factored in that there would be no money available. So the fact that we've been given 6.7 million split into 4 separate sections is a bonus. I'm waiting to see what the proposals are around this process. Previously, as I've said before, they've been competitive funding bids, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Okay, so I just want you to I'm just highlighting those issues. Happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Angus. Any questions?
I guess this paper you've done is on process, effectively, rather than actually what's happening in the islands. Is that right? Would you say that?
Well, I think so last year's paper and this year's paper identifies the projects that have benefited from this. So yes, whilst there is a lot of process on it, it does identify the projects that have benefited from it.
Because if I have a request for you, I'd like you to look at the island of Rum, which has got 22 adult people on it, and it's 25,000 acres. A very small school road with a big issue in the schooling system, some very, very tired houses. And it is owned by Nature Scott, as you know, but it is, I would say, it's a failing island, where upon places like Egg and Muck, I would say were very successful islands. So that's just my company worth. Rum has got some major problems.
Okay.
Thanks, Angus. In terms of the sections 9 and 10 with the funding, will I presume, will there be a process whereby all the various islands are made aware of these funding streams and what the timeframes are? For the section 10, is that this amount here, the 6.7 million, is this for this financial year or for the next financial year? Like, is it going to be hard to get it spent because of the time frame on it?
Yeah, so it's for the current financial year that we're in. The issue you raise is a good one, in as much that we have always been pressing both governments, in fact, when it comes to funding, is if they can give us as early notification as possible. There are specific issues with the islands because the longer they leave it, we then hit some of the more winter months. And there's difficulty with transport accommodation, and we've flagged this up on a number of occasions. So I had a meeting very recently with the Islands team in the Scottish Government, and we've flagged this up again. Now, the Islands team have actually put a proposal forward to Scottish Government ministers, and they're waiting for the sign-off there to happen. There's a meeting on the 12th of June from the Islands Strategic Committee, which our leader and our Chief Executive will go to, and I'm hoping we'll have an announcement by then as to what the process is. What then happens is there is a pipeline of projects that exist in all the islands, and it'll probably be a competitive process, and you have to bid in for that. That's all I can talk about what's happened previously. There's no indication that might not happen again, but I suppose that's probably a good indication as to what will happen on this occasion.
Okay. Yep. So, yeah, because we're already almost halfway through this financial year. There's a lot of money to spend in 6 months. Seems crazy. Anyway, but I mean, good. There's funding available, but it's always the time frames. But this financial year.
So that would have just started in April. So we're probably just a month in.
Oh yeah, so we've got a bit because it's to April next year. Oh well, a few more months.
Earlier the notice. I appreciate that. Earlier the notice is always better for us in terms of how we can bid in for these things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So does it in that year, does the project have to be started or is it completed?
Usually it has to be spent within the financial year. Usually.
Yeah. Very hard, isn't it? Yeah. And this is being allocated through Highland Council as the administrator. Would that be correct or not?
Yes. So each individual island council, of which there are 6, will put a bid in for various projects, and there's a number of projects in pipelines. I think the small isles are pretty good at that. In fact, they do have project pipelines, and what you try and do with a lot of this funding is you look at what the criteria is and you try and shoehorn your existing whatever projects are there into that funding. It's no different to any other funding. I think you kind of go, right, we've got all these projects simmering on the boil. What's the next set of funding that comes along, and then you try and shoehorn it in that way. That's how it relates.
Okay, thank you. I think Andrew and then John.
Sorry. Yes, thanks. We're not talking just about the small isles, are we? Are you talking about the Outer Hebrides as well?
Yes. So there are 6 councils that have islands. I suppose there's 3 island councils and 3 councils that have islands. Highland Council being in the latter category. So that pot of funding I've listed there is basically the totality of the Scottish Islands. So we will bid in for that. There's no criteria there, as I've seen as yet, that will say we're only entitled to a certain percentage. There's no criteria out on that yet. It may happen. It's not happened yet, but it may happen. But it may be that we could put forward a bid and get, I don't know, half of that if it was a great bid, potentially.
And going back to the Irish connection, that was specifically around Gaelic.
Yes, that's correct. And look, I didn't know where to put that. I heard that information and I passed on to a Gaelic unit, and I thought I'm just going to add it in here because it's a potential for islands.
And should we request people to funnel their requests for money to you?
No, what'll happen is that it'll probably be Fiona Cameron is usually on top of this in terms of what the pipeline projects are. So normally when it becomes available, I get in touch with I get in touch with Malcolm MacLeod, Head of Infrastructure. I get in touch with Alan Maguire as well. I usually get in touch with Fiona, and Andy McCann has got the economic brief. I usually get in touch with those 4 individuals and say, look, this is what the money is available, and they're pretty sharp and get onto it very quickly.
And have you done that already by any chance?
That's been done in previous funding cycles, but I'm still awaiting the criteria for this year. I don't know what the criteria is for this year. We just know the amount, but we don't know what the criteria is in terms of how we bid, when it has to be spent, whether it's going to be a competitive process or not.
Right, but you could, correct me if I'm wrong, you could warn them that it's coming down the line.
So they are aware of that. They are aware of that, but the actual detail they're not aware of yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Angus. John.
Thank you, Angus. In the future funding, you mentioned 1.3 million capital for carbon neutral islands. You also mentioned RASE. Do they need a specific certificate or status, and are they likely to get that within the time frame in order to be able to bid into that particular pot of money?
So, sorry, you broke up there a wee bit, but RASE is the only island in Highland that will be eligible for that.
Right. Have they got that status now, which enabling them to bid in for that?
Yes. So what happened was the Scottish Government identified 6 separate islands relating to the 6 separate authorities, and RASE was the one that was chosen. I wasn't part of how the criteria was developed there, but RASE was the one that was chosen, so they will be the ones that are eligible for that. Now, it may be because it's suitably vague. It says 1.3 million capital for carbon neutral islands. It may be that might assist other islands to bring them up to it. But at this minute in time, I would suggest it's probably just RASE.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that.
Thanks, members. Thank you.
And have a good day.
Take care. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye now.
Right. So now we move on to agenda item 8, and which is on parking income and tariffs. And Shane will be joining us again. Good morning again. Still morning. Good morning, Shane. How are you? And thank you for joining us.
Good morning, members. Sorry for my rude interruption, but earlier on, but I just had to. It was a bit of a shock to the system, so I'll be glad to discuss that with you, maybe what the implications are during the course of our session just now. But I'm here to present the paper you requested, updating you on some information around Fort William parking income, and to clarify some ambitions that you have around tariffs. I must present a mea culpa to you members and take full responsibility for the fact that these changes weren't advertised in March. It's my fault. I was changing every tariff in every car park in the whole of the councils, across the whole of the council, and I only took the £7 across that we'd originally discussed and not looked at the spreadsheet which we had updated further to that. So hands up, my fault, nobody else's. I beg for your forgiveness, and hope that you can deliberate on the proposals that are within this paper. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, members. I've tried to clarify the current situation for you to make sure you're all aware of how the money is currently shared, with a preamble in item 4, which describes the policy of the council as it stands. In that any income generated prior to November 2019 is dealt with as service income, and it supports budgets, wages, etc. And any income generated after 2019 is dealt with on a local area split of 50% of net income after costs. And I've also given you some added information there about invitation to pay in common goods sites, quite fortuitously as it happens. So that's why the explanatory note's in there, just to make it clear that unfortunately Fort William's car parks are long established and are dealt with as service budgets and not as a local share income. in general. Obviously, you've got the West Bay car park in Malig, and any of the new car parks which are listed in this paper will all be subject to the 50% split as well. Then obviously the tariffs. I've tried to describe what was advertised in the appendix 2, which shows what was advertised this year, and then I've highlighted for you the changes that you had discussed previously for you to deliberate on today. And that's really it. So any questions?
Yeah. Thank you, Shane. And yeah, we do appreciate that you had a lot of tariffs to change and a lot of new car parks across the Highlands. So yeah, we do understand. Before I have a few questions, but I'm happy if anyone will go with anyone else's questions first. Anyone else?
I've got some. I'll let you.
Okay. So I guess first, in terms of the item 6 with the new mandatory pay and display car parks, when will these becoming operational and starting to charge? Is my first question. And I've also got a query. So in that list, we've got Glen Nevis Road End currently free, and then Achintee Road End currently on street and free. Why is Glen Nevis Road End not? Why is the Achintee Road End classified as on street parking when the Glen Nevis Road End isn't? So that, and then. Yeah, I've got a few. Do you want me to sort of go through a few?
I'll answer those two first. I'll answer that one
Yeah.
for you first. So all these car parks here, I've got a stinking cold as well, so more sympathy, please. all these car parks have been included in the new master order. So we've been drafting a new order, which members I've alluded to, which covers 300 odd car parks in Highland, including 100 new cemetery car parks. And I've included all the sites that you've drawn to my attention, members, and other sites in Lochaber. And that's allow us to designate a car park as a regulated car park and or a regulated and mandatory car park. So it basically says this is a regulated car park, so the land is regulated for the purpose of parking vehicles, and there's an additional classification which says it's mandatory, therefore pay and display must be paid or a penalty will be imposed. So we've scheduled these car parks in the order. There's some 300 plans which are currently getting finalised and printed off. And then each one has to be notified and signed by a solicitor, strangely enough, but that's the way the world is. And we publish that order. So we will publish that order, and in case anybody's got any objections, that will be dealt with through our statutory process through traffic regulation orders, and members will be asked in their area to take a view on any objections we receive for those car parks. So we're currently at the stage in which we're finalising the order. I'll be looking to publish the order this month with a fair wind. Can't guarantee it, but that's what I'm trying to do. And in the interim, additional to this paper, it's within our gift to. Sorry to say, my phone's going off. Turn off. We could make them invitation to pay. So we could basically put out a notice telling people, we're not asking permission. We're basically telling people this is land that is currently may or may not be currently regulated by the council. If it is currently regulated, then we can make it invitation to pay because it's basically a donation. It's the same as the West Bay in Lochaber. So I've secured capital, not from the council's budget. This is recovery of capital to buy new machines. So that was going to be one of my hurdles to get over. Obviously, £4,000 a pop for the machines, but I've managed to secure that money ready to purchase these machines. So, we could see some of these sites operational this summer with a fair wind. What's the difference between the road end? That's just the description. So Glenetive Road End is the car park that sits off the road at the end of Glenetive. And we've been in discussions with NTS, National Trust for Scotland, about regulating that car park, but that has not concluded and it's not finalised. It may not happen, but I've included it to try and make sure that we're ahead of the game. Achintee is different. It's actually on-street parking at the moment. The road ends, but there's a section of that road that has, parking for vehicles. So it's got a different legal definition. It's classed as on-street parking.
So why is Glen Nevis Road End not on-street parking?
Oh, it's an actual car park. Glenetive is an actual car park that's off the road.
Glen Nevis Road End.
I think it's a car park. I think it's classed as a car park at the end of the road.
So why can't Achintee Road End be classed as a car park?
No, it can, both will be dealt with internally within the services. I'll ask the roads team to delist the sections of road that may be affected, because you can't have it. You can't have it as an adopted road and also have it as a car park. It's one or the other. So it's an internal exercise that I will have with my roads colleagues, which will basically mean that they'll change the description of the road. It'll stop at the start of the car park. I'm sorry to confuse you, members, but it's just it's not going to stop us doing what we're doing. Another scenario could be that I could publish an on-street pay and display order for any of these roads that are currently adopted roads. But I have to have a discussion with my roads colleagues as well on that subject. So that's why I've classed them slightly differently. I'm not sure Glen Nevis Road End, and I may be wrong on it. I thought maybe it wasn't adopted, but I may be wrong. So that's the first two anyway. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah. So we're looking. So we're definitely looking at these becoming operational this season.
All going well. Yes.
We're hopeful. Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. So that's really good to hear. We're going to hold you to this one. So my next question is that in this list in various places you talk about the car park at the Ben Nevis Visitor Centre in Glen Nevis, but so it's managed by Highland Council. I know some of the revenue goes to High Life Highland, so I'm just wondering why it is included in Appendix 2, but we don't have the income from it listed in Appendix 1, and I'm hoping perhaps that can be added to Appendix 1 because it is managed by the Highland Council.
Well, it's not. Historically, what happened some time ago, predating me obviously, when High Life Highland came into existence, that car park was rolled over into their suite of managed facilities, and we had nothing to do with it, i.e. parking services. In 2016 it was, that's High Life Highland, we're not touching that. So we never had anything to do with it. I got a phone call from them and helped them buy machines for themselves, and that was it. That was all I did. Since then they've struggled with the machines, and we have provided them with a machine to allow them to take card payments at the site. But what they've asked us to do is to regulate the site, create a traffic order for the site, so that if people don't pay, we enforce it. The income that's generated at the site all goes to High Life Highland. Council doesn't get any of it. Now, I'm not saying that that's correct or incorrect. That's just the way it is. and it's predates me why that is. It's not something I can answer you on. So the reason I've included it in there is that obviously I'm going to regulate the site. I wanted members to be aware of that as a function of the council, that if somebody doesn't pay for parking there, they'll get a penalty charge. And I'm just being transparent and open on that.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. The income from the Malig West car park is the income is coming to the area from 2023-24. Is that the first year that this car park was charging for parking?
No, so there was income, I think, in 2022-23 as well, which I reported. So what happened was the first year that we had invitation to pay income was 2022-23, and I issued bulletins to each area committee telling them of the amount that would be earmarked for their budgets. I think it's sort of fallen through the gap a little bit. I'm not sure what discussions were had at your committee, because the once the service earmarks the money, we take nothing more to do with it. It's purely within your governance and your committee structure how you spend that money, and you will have funds you allocate through grants, already, and this would be dealt with in, I presume, in the same manner.
So the 9K that's currently in Appendix 1, is that from 22-23 and 23-24? Is that just 23-24's income?
Just 23-24. I will double check while we're talking if there was money from 22-23. Carry on. I'll look for that while we're talking.
Okay. Yeah, excellent. That would be good to know the previous. And then, sorry, finally, Appendix 2, the list here. So the car parks, so we were looking at increasing the charge up to 24 hours to £10, and we've got that for some of the car parks. It would be really good if that £10 charge up to 24 hours could be included across all the car parks that have up to 24-hour charging, so that it's consistently £10, rather than some car parks are still sitting at £6 for up to 24 hours. So I think anywhere where there's up to 24-hour parking, it should just consistently be £10.
Okay.
If everyone, yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
We're looking at West End car park at the moment.
Yeah.
Camper van, absolutely jammed.
Yeah.
They're taking up 2 parking places.
Yeah. And I guess, and how is it going to be regulated, the car parks that say no motorhomes between 22 hours and 0800 hours? How is that going to be regulated?
Well, the way we've done it, and we do it everywhere, is that officers will do random evening patrols, usually through the summer season, in which they will, around about 9 o'clock, they'll go around car parks and look for anybody parked up and tap on the windscreen, leave a note on the vehicle, one or the other, and try and educate people that if they're still here later on, they could receive a penalty charge notice, and that usually does the trick. Officers do not have nighttime patrols. We just don't have the resource to do that. It's not done in the council. We do early morning patrols, so we can be out, 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning. So we sometimes penalise people at that time of day, because we've given fair warning at night time and there's adequate signage in the car park. If we turn up at 7 o'clock and there's a motorhome there, then he's getting a parking ticket. That's how we deal with it in the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So, and are you happy? Can we please the 24-hour up to? Can that please be £10 across the board?
No problem.
Thank you.
What date would you want that to start from? Realistically speaking,
Today.
Can't do that. I've got to publish a notice. So I mean, realistically speaking, it would need to be. We need 14 days from the date of the notice. So it's going to be some date in early June.
Yep, it's just basically as soon as logistically possible, and if it could be this season, even better.
1st of June. 1st of June.
Yeah, we'll be. Yeah, another thing. the hammers falling here, Shane.
I could curry
no
favour with
sympathy.
you. I could curry favour and lie to you, members, but I'm not going to do that. I will aim for the earliest date in June possible. I'll get the notice drafted, and I need to get it in the press. So I'll go for the earliest possible date in June to allow 14 days notification period.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I mean, this is all revenue, for the council, some of it for the area, and of course we're going to have some discussions about this car park across the road here.
Yeah, well, it's a good time maybe to discuss it. I mean, obviously, listen, it is what it is, and it will be a great benefit to the Common Good Fund of Lochaber, as it is in other areas where we distribute common good income. I mean, the mechanics of it are straightforward in that, and I've explained it in the paper, 100% of the income is basically deposited with the ledger code for the Common Good Fund on a weekly basis. As the money comes in, we allocate it. It goes straight into the Common Good Fund. And then at the end of the year, we will put a report to the Common Good paper to you saying it's cost X, Y, and Z for this money to be collected. The service needs to draw back this amount, but 100% of the money goes to the Common Good Fund. Then, for due diligence and transparent accounting, the service then says to you, here's all the transaction costs, etc. There's a little tiny bit of staff time that we put against it, and here's how much we need back. I mean, as a rule of thumb, it's basically about 10% of any income, thereabouts, that you would expect to have to pay the service when it comes to common good sites. Just from my experience with other common good sites, it's there or thereabouts, 10%. So the next question, which will have to be debated separately, will be how are we going to divvy up this site, because 2/3 of it's common good land and 1/3 of it isn't. So we're going to have to do a little bit of work, myself and Seda, and a decision will have to be made at your level, members, in conjunction with the service, on a fair split. Will it be a proportion of the bays? 1/3 of the bays are in our council, 1/3 of the bays are 2/3 are common good. Therefore, 2/3 of any income goes to common good and 1/3 goes to the service. For example, that's my instinct. And that's the easiest way to do it, although it does create a lot of extra admin, but that's just the way it's got to be. So no doubt there will be further discussions to be had with you members with an agreement on that position. But that's my instinct, just hearing about it today, and had a wee chat with Sarah after she finished with you, and that's probably where it'll sit.
Yeah, thank you, Shane. Did you just the question about the Malig West income? What was the income from the year? Sorry, because I then asked another question that you had to
Yes. I did stop looking, so hold on. I'll just.
Yes, 22, 23, and then I should probably know. As you can see, I was going to put the time on this paper.
Spreadsheet's coming up now. I'm just waiting for it.
Well, it's. Well, it's money to go back in, back into the area.
So Lochaber, there was 7,500 from 22-23.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Which should have been earmarked. Again, I'm not sure how that's going to be, the mechanics of that, but it was earmarked and needs to be carried forward. So that'll be 7,500. The only thing, I mean, the governance lies with the area committee.
Yeah.
The recommendation that the service makes is that we ask members to spend the money in the wards that generate it, so that the public see the benefits directly. It's your decision, members, but the service makes the honourable suggestion that the money raised in a ward is spent in a ward.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Shane? Does anyone else have any questions?
I have a favour, and it's to do with the members rather than you, I think, Shane. The Viewforth car park is 3 hours. Some of our other car parks are 4 hours. The retailers in town would really like, not least the Highland Cinema, their interest, would like it to increase to be 4 hours. I don't think that, I think we're increasing the charge by 50% from £2 to £3. And it just allows people to spend a bit more time in the town. From my selfish point of view, declaring interest is 3 hours doesn't allow people to come and watch a film or, and have a meal or anything like that together. So it does matter quite a lot. It's far from me only who wants that.
Okay, yeah. I think, I mean, we've had this discussion before because the part of the reason for extending the parking time is so that people working on the high street can park there. But then, of course, if the car park's filled up with all the people working on the high street, then where do all the visitors park?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, it's very seldom full. So there are times in maybe late July and August that it is full, but it is very seldom full. And so, I don't think people in the town are working 4 hour days. I think they're really working a full day, they're not working there at all.
Yeah.
And if they can work park in West End car park and walk along having bought the locals car, which is very cheap.
Yeah. How easy is it to do this, Shane?
I just changed the tariffs by notice, exactly as I'm going to do with the long stay car parks. All I do is just publish a change in the tariff. I mean, all I'll say is historically, the things that you've already discussed is that there was a clear delineation between short stay and long stay, and the long stay sites obviously are there for people usually parking half a day or the whole day, whereas supporting the high street, Viewforth was always, and Middle Street were always seen as the short stay car parks, so that there was turnover to access the retail environment for shorter stays. And if somebody was going to stay all day, then they would park in the transport centre or West End or Adaird because they were there all day. That is historically why these car parks are different and probably still relevant. And it's not a decision for me to make as an officer. I would suggest it's a decision for members to make to change that philosophy. Do we change Viewforth as well, and do we change Middle Street? You know, do we change Parade? You know.
Well,
yeah.
What I'm really doing is passing on quite a lot of people's concerns that the retailers in the high street feel that we are disadvantaged compared to the out-of-town shopping centres, Morrison's or wherever, and they would like people to be able to stay a bit longer. And I think with increasing the price by 50%, then it's not unreasonable to increase the amount of time they can stay there by a third.
So we've got Andrew and then Thomas on. So Andrew and then Thomas online. Oh, sorry, I missed you. Sorry.
Andrew, you're mute.
Mute.
Not anymore. Sorry. Shane, the figures you give us are as income are through the machines. Is there any recording of penalties? You mentioned penalties earlier. I just wondered if we totted up penalties, or perhaps they go into a big central pot somewhere else.
Okay, so yes, obviously all the penalties we recover by area are published on the council website, so you can go to the parking section and see that. So all the penalties that we've issued in Lochaber, for example, is listed. But penalty charge notices is not classed as income. Okay, I can see some of you glazing over already. It's a penalty. So you know, if my guys are told if they can solve a parking problem without issuing a penalty charge notice, then they're doing their job. Their job isn't to penalise people. That's a result of people not reading the signs or not taking advice, etc. So we never budget for the amount of income we'll make. We have to understand how much we're making because it's used to pay wages directly. So the business model for parking services is such that we're a cost neutral service, so we don't cost the council any money. And one of the elements that we report to the Scottish Government is how many penalties we issue, how much income we make, and penalty charges and on-street income all goes into that cost benefit to pay wages, uniforms, materials, all the ancillary services we need to operate an enforcement regime. And there's about a 15% of off-street income goes into that kitty as well, that business case. But so we never income generated from fines is by the by, shall we say, from a budget situation for the council. We directly use it to pay the wages and to run the service.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Thomas?
Right, Shane, I've got two questions. The first one, just since we're in public forum, it gives you a chance to sort of say what the rules are. Where a car turns up at a car parking space and they park, and for whatever reason they overstay, whether it's a petrol car that's run out of petrol or an electric car that's ran out of charge and has arrived at one of our electric chargers to find that the electric charge is not working. So the car is very low and it can't get home, and it is then left, whether it's an electric car or a petrol car. What are the rules and regulations pertaining to whether you get a ticket or you don't get a ticket? Could you maybe give us some clarification that could go on public record for overstaying in a parking space?
Well, if we take out the petrol or EV issue for a moment and just say that a mandatory pay and display car park, any vehicle stationary within that car park must do so by displaying a pay and display ticket, right? So the offence would be parked in a car park without displaying a pay and display ticket. That would be the contravention we would issue under. There are other ones, parked out of bay, etc., etc., etc. But that's the main one which we would issue. When it comes to EV bays, we have. I wish I could just take it off the top of my head, but I think it's 30 minutes of observed occupying an EV bay without charging. I think it's 30 minutes that we apply. So enforcement officers would come along, see a car in an EV bay, either not plugged in or had completed its charge, and they would take a note on their handheld device at the time of observation. And then 30 minutes later, if they came back and that vehicle was still in that condition, then they would issue a penalty charge to it. Above and beyond that, if a vehicle's plugged into EV bay and is overstayed, then the method of payment they're using, there is a penalty payment charge that the EV team operate for overstaying in a bay as well, which I'm not familiar with. I just know that one exists. So you have an additional fee on whatever payment method you've used if you occupy an EV bay beyond, I think it's 45 minutes they have from memory. I can't guessing now, but it's there or thereabouts.
And if they arrive, if they arrive and the electric charger is not working and they stay, what rules are they contravening then?
Well, they're occupying an EV bay and not charging. Even though the charger's not working, they're occupying an EV bay and not charging. So that's a penalty charge.
Okay.
So, I mean, what we'd expect people to do is not to try and use is to park in a normal bay and pay for parking.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not straightforward, councillor, but that's as clear as I can make it.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks very much for that, because you have cleared a few things for me anyway. And the only other thing I wanted to say was about the 4 hours charge. I've raised this already. The reason it was brought in was for the very reason that we used to have free parking in the winter in Fort William. All the car parks were free, and the council used to meet at Lochaber House, and the car park was behind it there, beside the Imperial Hotel. All winter, you'd come to a council meeting and you could hardly find a parking space. And then on the 1st of May, charging would become effective, and you could go in and you could have a game of football in the car park, because there'd only be about half a dozen cars in it. And all the workers' cars had dissipated to who knows where, but they were no longer parked there for the summer, and it was to allow the turnover of traffic and allow people to come in. Because the moment the car parks are full, the same people in the high street will come to the council saying, you need to do something, there's no parking, I'm getting no customers. So that's why it was set at 3 hours. I would say the dynamics of the town have changed greatly. I think we're busier, but I think a lot of the town centre business, certainly from local people, is now going obviously to the Morrison's car park, and a lot of it is out at the Marks and Spencer's car park. A lot of the cars that would have looked for a home in the high street are maybe there now. I'm sure the dynamics have changed, but that's why it was brought in. It was to create turnover, because the temptation was people would maybe go home for their lunch, bring their car back, park it in a prime car parking space for 4 hours, and then there was a lack of space for tourists to come in and spend money in the high street. That's why it was put in, and that's why that specific car park, the Viewforth one, was made 3 hours. It was the most central, and it was deemed to be the one that we should try and get the tourism traffic to go to.
Yes, I agree, 100%. And I think we might be able to overcome the hurdle, to be fair, members, in that we ask people to put their registrations in. So I can prohibit them from reusing the car park. There's a downside to that, obviously. So we can block any vehicle registration for a period of 3 hours, or whatever we decide. So if they park in there for 4 hours, go home for lunch, and then try and park there again, it won't let them buy a ticket. Now, the downside to that is you might have people coming to the town to do something in the morning, and then to come down to do something in the afternoon, and they would be prohibited as well. So there's the pros and cons of using the vehicle registration. And that's why 3 hours was chosen because it's not just Fort William. You're not unique. Wherever we relax rules around parking, it's always workers. It's always business owners and their staff fill up spaces. If you ever find yourself in Nairn on a morning, go to the car parks behind the high street, and by 10 in the morning, you'll not find a space. And I can guarantee that very, very few of those cars are shoppers and customers that those businesses need. They're all people working in those businesses. Now it's free, so there's nothing I can do about it, but it's a fine balance, members. It's a fine balance.
And that's not the case. That is not the case in Fort William, and I don't think many people go home for lunch. Really don't. And I think there's plenty of room in that car park. We get on there now, there will be 30% of that space free. So the retailers in the town feel they're being disadvantaged versus retailers out of town, and feel strongly that that we should give people more time to spend money in the town. So this has been canvassed for a while. I'm trying again last year, and I'm trying again now. This really matters. If we want to help the town to thrive, this is, I think, a very easy way for us to do it, especially at a time when we're putting the rates up by 50%. The cost up by 50%.
I can do whatever you decide, members. You know, I'm just giving you advice. That's all, and it's your decision to make.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. I think John will let us be sitting here patiently.
Okay, thank you. Morning, Shane.
Morning.
Afternoon, actually. Sorry.
All right.
Sticking to the tariffs, one question. It was actually brought up by somebody else. I'm looking out at the West End car park and I can see the campers. Some of them are huge. Some of them are parked in marked bays, which is okay. But then, because of the volume of the traffic and the size of the car park, others are parked covering 2 bays.
Or more than 2.
Or more than 2, yeah. In terms of regulations and charging, is it charged by the bay or is it charged by the vehicle? So these big campers that are occupying 2+ bays, are we actually charging them for those 2 bays?
So on the tariff board in the car park, it says you pay for every bay you occupy.
Right.
I bet they're not. I'm sure they're not, because they're just saying, well, I'm parking alongside a motorhome that happens to be, because you don't have, you're sitting down in motorhomes, then they count them there. The motorhome bays are full, so they're parking next to that one, and then somebody comes and parks next to it. So they're not appreciating that they're actually not in bays.
So our officers will book anyone who's not in a bay, and they'll book anyone who is outside of a bay, i.e., if any of the wheels are beyond the white line of the bay. What we can't do is enforce overhangs, unfortunately. There's no legal definition of overhangs. But if a vehicle, for example, is of such a length that the chassis means that the wheels will occupy 2 bays, you know, lengthwise, then we ask them to pay for 2 bays. And so it's not.
The chassis is overhanging. I can't see any where the chassis is not, but they're overhanging. It's definitely stopping anybody parking behind them.
And there's nothing I can do about it, unfortunately. There's nothing I can do about it.
Every lay-by in Lochaber is full of the camper vans at the moment, not paying any money.
Yeah.
I was going to raise that one. So, yeah, similar issues in Mallaig as well, in terms of camper vans. I haven't been down in the last couple of months, but Mallaig, the West Bay car park, that car park, is that going to be all in bays?
Sorry, I missed the end of that. You cut out there.
Sorry, Mallaig West Bay?
Yeah.
Are you lining the whole of that car park? Will it be lined into bays?
West Bay is already lined, though, isn't it?
Right, I thought there was a section at the end that wasn't.
No, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can adapt the lining at a whim, really. I mean, we can change it to better suit circumstances. If you want us to have a look at it, I will. I mean, obviously, I've got an officer based in Mallaig, so I'll get him to report to me what we could do. I think we've provided some long bays at the top for coaches, so that we can get some of the coaches off the road and into the car park as well. So, yeah. East Bay, I've got much bigger plans for East Bay. So East Bay will be lined with sawtooth parking for motorhomes, so that we'll have longer bays at 90 degrees along the East Bay, so that we can accommodate a lot more motorhomes and charge them for parking as well.
Right. Yeah.
When is that due to happen? Because East Bay was certainly one we discussed previously about becoming a charging parking charge. So is that happening this year as well?
I can't give you a date. It's in the queue of traffic orders.
Okay.
Rather a long queue of traffic orders, but it's one that I don't know, members, how familiar you are with certain representatives of the community who have been very, very scrutinous of us in the past, and so I'm sensitive about giving it adequate time and making sure we don't hurry things for Malik.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Shane.
Another issue associated with Malik. I'll bring that up in a second, but Angus has mentioned it. In terms of lay-bys, there is a degree of complaint from truckers and sort of professional drivers that they reach a lay-by where they think, oh, I know where there's a lay-by, I can take me 20 minutes break, I'm fitting me taco regs, and then it's absolutely full of caravans and campers. And these people are then forced to drive potentially illegally to find another space. Is there anything we can do about that?
Short answer, no.
Right.
Basically, a lay-by is an area provided for the safety of vehicles, of all vehicles, and you can't delineate between them. And if that means somebody in a motorhome wants to stop and have a rest because they're tired, then they can stop and have a rest. I get the abuse that you're aware of, members. I get the bigger picture, but there's nothing in the current standardised regulations that allow us to delineate between different machines. We would have to provide a designated bay for a class of vehicle. So the council would have to invest in changes to infrastructure, and we'd have to build, say, an HGV only bay every 5 miles or whatever. And I can't see that happening quickly.
That might be something worth exploring. But the other one, going back to Malik, I apologise for this. I know you sort of struggle with it and it comes up regularly. I am again, probably the season for it, getting requests from islanders and discussions about designated bays for islanders to keep their cars in so they can actually travel from the island and then they have a vehicle here. I know it's an ongoing problem. Is there anything we can do at this point?
It will be addressed in the order that I will publish. So I will be designating 25 small Isles permit holder bays in the East Bay area. And they will have their own bays that will be designated permit holder bays. I've been liaising with the small Isles directly through their community representatives over the last 2 years, and keeping them updated on what we could or couldn't do. And we're at the stage now where I will be. I've actually partially drafted the order, so I'm just not wanting to give you false hope in a date, members. But the work's underway. The work is underway, and they will get 25 small Isles permit bays, which they can use for their onshore vehicles. Let's call it that.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, what about Lloyd Art?
Same.
Yeah, including 25, nothing.
Okay. I think the problem with this 3-4 hour discussion is it goes round and round. I don't know. Do we want to have a vote?
Continue to unlock public toilets in the town.
You can't do that, Angus. That's no. You're not unlocking them personally anyway.
Free tickets.
No, you can't do that either.
For the committee.
So we're going to have a vote then. So this is just for the Middle Street Viewforth car park. So Angus is proposing we change it, the minimum hours from 3 hours to 4 hours. So we'll have a vote. Who agrees we change Viewforth car park from 3 hours to 4 hours? All those for? Okay. And if we, so I think we've got a majority for, in a year's time, we're going to review it. Well, of course, Shane's first got to do the changes, but we review it, and if we find that it's just filling up with business owners parking, then it will go back to 3 hours.
I mean, I listened to what Angus was saying. We've got to see a cinema as being a magnet for the town. And the way it is at the moment is the film is long. You just end up seeing the film, or got to go to the car park, go shopping, or go to the restaurant.
Okay, so Shane, we'll review it once it's been in place for a year.
So, members, just to clarify, I will change the minimum stay in Viewforth car park to 4 hours, along with the other tariff changes that I'm making, and we'll just review it next year.
What's happened here? Something's gone on. Yes, and the other thing is that £10, 24 hours. For all of them, any that has 24-hour charging.
So I'll draft the notice with all these changes and copy you in, members, so that you see it before it goes out.
That would be very good. Thank you very much, Shane. I think Thomas has got his hand up, and then we will draw this to a conclusion.
It was just quite quickly, Shane, the item on laybys. If you look at the 82 between Corn and Fort William, it's a long tube of trees you drive through, and a lot of it there's no view. Could we designate at least one of these laybys to be HGV? And it was an old roads engineer that said to me that if you get where the sign says parking in 1/4 of a mile, and you then opened up the view to the loch, people would park in that parking space. And then if you left the one for HGV owners, drivers, they would soon learn where their lay-by was, and you leave it looking like a jungle. There's no view. There's signs up saying HGV onlys. It gives them somewhere to roll in, and it allows the frustration of being stuck behind a lorry to dissipate. And, an accident costs society a lot of money. Could we maybe designate one of these lay-bys to be HGV only and try and do something about it, or is it just too costly?
No, we couldn't do it anyway because it's a trunk road. So we'd have to ask the trunk road manager for any particular trunk road if they would be willing to do that. So it's not a decision for the council anyway. It's a decision for the Transport Scotland. So yes. So somehow that request would have to go through. Who would take that forward? May I suggest that the committee ask Elizabeth McIver, who attends the Trunk Road liaison meetings, to take this issue up? It wouldn't even be me that would be drafting any order, so because it's Trunk Road.
Okay. We can follow that up. Thanks.
And maybe consider it for more than one location, and make it say, well, can we do one on the 830? Can we do one north of and one south of Fort William on the 82, etc. Maybe raise it as a wider issue so that we could look at, it's a meatier subject, and it might gather, snowball might gather more snow that way.
Good suggestion. Thanks, Shane. And Sarah's got a very short question.
A very short one. EV chargers. So when you're parking in your charging, you don't have to pay a display ticket.
Correct.
I think he can hear you.
The only thing is that it's not made clear, and particularly when you're not from this area, when you just park for 45 minutes to recharge. Are there ways of making that clear in car parks, that when people are charging, they don't have to put a ticket? I don't even know if it's something that applies in other parts of Scotland, if it's just the Highlands. But I know when I'm in other parts of Scotland and I charge the car, I actually put a pay and display because I'm not sure whether I have to or not. If we could make it clear in the Highlands. So that's the 45 minutes for the fast charger. What happens if it's a slow charger and they stay for 2 hours because, on a destination charger it's a bit longer? Is it still 45 minutes, or can they go up to 2 hours? Or
can I ask members to maybe get the EV management team in and have a chat with them? I'm straying out of my field a little bit. So we just basically have agreed with them that we won't penalise anyone for non-payment of pay and display if they're in an EVB. Yeah. It's more of an inter-service arrangement. Different councils have different policies on this, and maybe this council needs to nail the colours to the mast and get a policy. But I would suggest that some discussion are had with the EV management team and Fleet, who manage some of those aspects. But EV management would be your best port of call first and foremost.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
So I think we'll conclude and before you go and get a nice drink and recover, Shane. So basically we've noted the income, we're agreeing the further tariff increases and the changes regarding the 3 hours and the £10, noting the proposed tariffs for Glencoe and agreeing the regulation for car park sites in section 6. And we look forward to them coming online and being operational soon. Thank you, Shane.
My pleasure, members. We've got a major incident in Inverness, so just let you know, we've got a train, an LPG train leaking gas. So I'm having to go. We might lose power in the city centre. So I'm flying out of here straight into that. So I've taken as many notes as I can and see what I can do to expedite the delivery that you wish to see.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Right, so item 9, we're just noting the award discretionary fund grants that were awarded last year, April 23 to March 24. And then item 10 is just for noting the minutes from the January meeting. And then item 11 is the appointment of a member to the proposed West Highland Way skier board of trustees. Willie, is someone?
I've messaged Phil. Wait, he'll be joining us very shortly. So if you can just bear with us until he joins, he should be coming in now.
Will do. Thank you.
Can I just take this chance to remind members that the business meeting starts at 1:30 today? And that first item for URAM, there'll be 2 people coming in to the building, so they'll be in person.
Very good. Nice to see you.
Yep.
Half a quiche.
Well, you are sweet.
Yeah.
There's a piping competition.
Right.
That one was
There's 4. There's 4 lectures. It's a long one behind the When the afternoon it gives the talk, you then sat down and they looked like that.
Before the work.
Yes.
Hi, members. I'm not sure if Philip's going to be joining us, but I see the items just to get nominations. So if you want, I can just take you through that.
Yep, that would be good. Thank you. Then we can finish.
Yeah. So members, nominations are invited to appoint 1 member from the Lochaber area as an interim trustee of the West Highland Way Scottish Charitable Incorporated Organisation for the first year of establishment and the first term once established. So can I have nominations, please?
Phil's joined now as well, by the way, just in case.
I think we've started, Willie, so we'll just continue.
Andrew, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I nominate Kate.
I nominate Kate.
I second it.
I think we've got that sorted then, Alistair. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, members.
So that draws to a conclusion the May area committee meeting. Thank you very much.